Okay, Mum, so following today's TikTok, we're
Yeah.
just discussing how to start a children's application.
Absolutely. So I'm going to take you through the C100 form. The layout's a little bit different on the online application, but all the questions are the same. So if you're watching the TikTok video whilst doing it online, the online questions come in a slightly different order, but all the questions are the same. So the first page of the actual C100 asks you to confirm by signing that you know that you have to have a MIAM. So you have to have at least attempted mediation. Okay, so just know that you have to do that. Moving on to the main page of the C100, this is just all the admin details. So don't bother completing the top right hand part because that will be completed by the court. You'll put your name, you will now be the applicant, so your name, your last name, the name of your opponent or the respondent and their last name, the nature of the application. Now on a C100 you can apply for a child arrangements order, which is a contact order. You can apply for a prohibited steps order, which is an order that prohibits or stops the other person from doing something, or a specific issue order, which is an order that asks the other person to do something, okay? So you'll tick which one you want, and sometimes you might need all three, depending upon the situation. Over on the right hand of the screen, you can see that we have concerns about risk of harm. So if any of those apply, tick those: domestic abuse, child abduction, child abuse, etc. If you tick yes to any of those, you will have additional questions to answer. If you're sending it in by post, the additional questions will come in the form of the C1A, and it's all self-explanatory on the form. Then you have some additional information, again, just admin. Is this an urgent hearing that's required without notice? And what without notice means is, do you need or do you want the hearing to go ahead without the other person knowing? That's appropriate in emergency cases. So we tick yes, we want the hearing to go ahead quickly. We don't want the other person to know about it. Then after that, the court will generally have what we call a return date and set down a second hearing where that person can attend court and put their side of the story forward. Moving then on to the second page, it's all the information about the children. So the children's name, their dates of birth, if they're female, if they're male, what orders you're applying for, because you may be applying for a child arrangements for one child and perhaps a prohibited steps for another. So the court want to know exactly what order you want in respect of each child. Moving on to the next page, again, more admin. The court want to know if any of the children are known to the local authority. You can complete all that. Have any of the children been part of a child protection plan? Do all children have the same parent? So straightforward questions, go through all of those. Who do the children live with? Do they live with the applicant, which will be you, the person filling out the form, or do they live with the respondent? Then we get on to the MIAMs. Now, mediation isn't compulsory. You can't force somebody to go to mediation. However, the court like you to at least attempt it. So what that means is that you'll contact a mediator if you feel it's appropriate. If you actually have been experiencing domestic abuse, domestic violence, and you think actually mediation is not appropriate, you can tick an exemption on here. If none of the exemptions apply, contact a mediator and at least try. The mediator will contact the other side. You haven't got to do any of that, all right? If it works, great. If mediation doesn't, then the mediator will give you the necessary MIAMS form, which is what this form is asking you about, okay? So I won't labour on all the mediation pages because there's sort of 3, 4, maybe 5 pages that cover all different exemptions, covering domestic violence, if it's urgent, have you already had a MIAMS form before, etc. So there's page 9 is the actual MIAMS form that the mediator will sign and date and complete for you. That's the important part if you don't qualify for an exemption, okay? Then it goes on to, from page 10, a bit more of a narrative. So all the admin's dealt with. Why are you making the application? Now, you haven't got to go into reams of information here. The court just want a snapshot of why you feel the need to make this application. And the first thing it's going to ask you is, do you need permission? what that's asking is, do you have parental responsibility? So if you have parental responsibility, you don't need permission. If you don't have parental responsibility, you are going to need permission, okay? It then asks for some details. So typically in there, we're saying that the respondent is not allowing a regular routine of contact to take place between the applicant and the child. And of course, remember, it's the child's right to have a relationship with each parent, all right? Then it talks about on page 11 if it's urgent and you want that without notice that I talked about earlier. So if it is urgent, you'll complete that there. And urgent might be because, let's say the respondent has taken the children and isn't returning them to you. Or perhaps the child's been removed from school or nursery without your permission. So actually you can't wait the 12 weeks to get the normal hearing date. We generally wait about 12 weeks now. You have to have this seen within a week or maybe 10 days. So that's where it would be urgent and that would apply. It will say, how long do you want that listed within? And you'll say, you know, within 5 days, 7 days, whatever. Depending on where you live in the country, will dictate how quickly you get before the court. Then it talks about the without notice hearing. Why do you think that's important? Why do you not want the other person to be served with the papers? Then it goes on to any other court cases where the children have been involved in. So perhaps this is a return date to court. Perhaps you're already in the middle of other proceedings dealing with the children. Perhaps there's been old proceedings 2 or 3 years ago. Put all the details in here. That's what section 7, page 13 is asking you for. Page 14, cases with an international element. So if there is an international element there, you'll complete page 14. Then it talks about factors affecting your ability to participate in proceedings. So if there's any learning difficulties or hearing difficulties, anything like that, maybe disabilities that prevent you from actually attending court. So you'll use that section to fill out that. And then attending court, then it's talking about the language that you might need to help you if you can if you can speak English and understand English, if you can write English and you can understand the written English, and if not, then you would fill that in because the court will make provisions to help you with all of that. It says, do you or any of the parties require the court to appoint an interpreter? If you need an interpreter, then you'll tick there. If you need an intermediary, you'll indicate there. And then it wants the details for you and the respondent. So your name, your gender, your date of birth, where you were born, your address, just more admin really. The reason for this is that the court will serve the respondent. So they need to know your address because they'll post out your application once it's been issued, but they'll also send it to the respondent as well. So that's really key. If you don't have the respondent's details, your application's going to get stuck in the process. Then it talks about the respondent, and they want to know all of their details as well on page 17, and then anybody else that should be given notice. So for example, if you're already in the system and perhaps social workers are involved, perhaps there's somebody else who has parental responsibility for this child. Anybody else with parental responsibility or any local authority that's involved, you have to include them at section 13, which is page 18 of the form. They must be given notice of the fact that you're making this application. And then coming towards the end, if you have a solicitor acting for you, you'd put their details at section 14. You've got a quick checklist just to make sure that you've completed it properly. You're then going to sign it, date it. Now there's a couple of ways that you can get this information to the court. You're either doing it on the online portal and you're uploading it that way, in which case just upload it. The court's going to then call you for the court fee, which is £32. I've got it written down over there. Or you can save this and email it to the court. Google your nearest family court and that will give you the email address. Or you can, old school, print it off and post it. Wouldn't recommend doing it that way because that really will be a slower process, particularly if it's urgent. You want to get it sent to the court as quickly as possible. And that's it. So don't be afraid to have a go yourself, guys, at completing that form. At least it's going to get the process started. You're going to be given a hearing date.